There's a growing movement in the American workplace, one that's not dominated by a political party or ideology, but by real Americans who oppose the divisive rules and cancel culture mandates that have invaded many of the nation's largest companies. This is a movement of hometown America. People who want to build their careers, raise their families, and live their faith in the spirit and legacy of the American dream. At Red Balloon, we're connecting no-nonsense employers with hardworking employees, people who are passionate about bringing accomplishment and success to their workplace. If you're an employer looking for serious talent, you need to post your job on Red Balloon. And if you're an employee who's tired of a cancel culture workplace, then come to Red Balloon and find your future. Because you should be free to grow your career, and you shouldn't have to choose between your job and your values.
Well, hello, y'all. Welcome to Water Break with my wife, Annie.
Hello.
And Gabe, the water boy here. It's good to be with you guys. We got a fun guest that we're going to be bringing on the show here in a minute.
I'm so excited.
Dr. Amie Hornaman. My wife has actually learned a lot from him. I'm trying to turn on some music just a little bit here. Going to talk about all things thyroid.
Yes.
Apparently, women's bodies are complicated. Yeah. Hey, guys, we're going to be at our National Fight Laugh Feast Conference in Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas. It's actually in Fort Worth at the Will Rogers Event Center, October 31st through November 2nd. So make sure we see you there. Go to prodigalamerica.com to sign up if you want a booth at the conference, all that stuff. It's going to be a great time with family and friends there. Download our app. That's the best place to consume us. We don't get canceled on our app. We might get canceled on YouTube, but not on our app. So make sure you download our app for that. And then lastly, if you want to be in conversation with us, you can email us at wrenchmedia.com. If you put a W in front of the wrench, it's not going to get there. It's got to be RENCH, wrenchmedia.com. And we try to answer most of those questions. Sometimes we even bring them up on the show.
Yeah, that's true.
So you want to introduce our guest since you know far more about her than I do.
Oh, my goodness. Well, we should have asked for an official bio.
Yeah,
How rude of us not to do that, because she's just really...
Well, we could also have her tell her what she does in her bio, too.
I think that maybe we should do that, okay? Dr. Amie, you there?
I'm good with that. Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show, Dr. Amie Hornaman, otherwise known as the Thyroid Fixer. I know that at least some of our crowd that listens knows who you are, if for no other reason that I talk about you all the time. And I think I've reposted several of your podcasts on my Instagram, so I know some people do, but I'm sure there's many who don't. So why don't you just take a second to tell us kind of who you are and what you're all about and how you became the Thyroid Fixer?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for posting and being a fan and reaching out and all the things. I love it. No, I am, yes, like you said, the Thyroid Fixer, and I fix broken thyroid, broken hormones. And literally, if you're over the age of 40, you probably have a thyroid problem and a hormone problem. So we're going to talk about that today. Yeah. But I started my journey 20 some years ago. I used to compete in fitness and figure competitions and did some fitness modeling. And there was one show I was getting ready for, and I'd done plenty of shows. 20 plus shows, photo shoots, all the things. You diet down for them, chicken, broccoli, fish, asparagus. You're hitting the gym twice a day. This one show getting ready for, the scale actually was going up instead of down. And that didn't biologically make sense. Whether you believe in calories in, calories out or not, that shouldn't have been happening with energy expenditure. Just what I was taking in versus what I was putting out, the scale should not have been going up. So I went to my doctor, because that's what we do when something's wrong. And when your body's basically angry and rebelling against you. And my doctor told me that you're normal. Everything is fine. Now I have no idea what he tested. I have no idea, because I wasn't even in this space back then.
Right.
I was just doing my thing and wondering why the scale went up. And after he basically blew me off and told me I was fine when I didn't feel fine at all, I kept going. So I went to doctor number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6.
Wow.
By that time, the scale had gone up 25 pounds, but I actually stopped getting on it after I saw the 25.
Oh yeah. It'll make you crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure it hit 40. I think and I'm 5'2" for anyone that's wondering. So 40 pounds on a 5'2" frame.
So during this time, you actually increased in about 40 pounds and you're still kind of working out, still kind of doing the dieting thing, still kind of trying to compete. That whole physical exertion thing was going on while you increased in weight is what you're saying?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And, I bowed out of the show because I knew it just wasn't happening, but I was still trying because I really went into, you start to question yourself. You start to self-blame. You go, okay, maybe I need to exercise more. Maybe I need to do 3 a day. Maybe I should restrict my calories more. Well, the one doctor told me to eat less and exercise more. So maybe I should do that.
Classic.
When realistically, I mean, it would be impossible to do with the diet that I was on. So yeah, I kept plugging away. But that wasn't working. Yeah. That wasn't working at all.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And so how did you
well, let her finish her story.
Let her finish?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, doctor number 6.
Dr.
We're getting
Amie.
to the good part. Yeah.
So now you're 40 pounds overweight.
Yeah. Really
right.
Feeling good.
Right. Hating myself, hating life. And I mean, honestly, like the depression, and I know if any of your listeners are going through the same thing, man, the depression that sets in. I just remember crying in my car. I remember praying to God that I would accept any diagnosis at that point.
Yeah.
Right.
Because at least it would have been a name and maybe there was a medication to fix it.
Right. Yeah. Right.
And you wouldn't feel crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Medical gaslighting is real, by the way. So, sometimes it happens that you are kind of told that it's all in your head. And you do feel crazy and you go, oh my gosh, maybe I do need that antidepressant that they're offering me because it's up here.
Yeah.
But we know, I wasn't Prozac deficient. That wasn't the problem. Doctor number 7 actually touched my neck and said, swallow. And she goes, okay, I'm feeling a nodule here. We're going to get you ultrasounded, but you have hypothyroidism. Here's a pill. So, I mean, that was it. That was the answer to my prayers, right? I was so excited. I left her office with hope and I gave it 5 months and there wasn't a single change in my body.
When I did the
research, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, what did she put you on? Do you remember?
Oh yeah, it was T4 only. It was Levo.
We can get to that. Yeah.
So that's when I started doing the research and I'm like, wait a minute, there's T2, there's T3, there's all these other T's, all these other thyroid hormones. And she put me on the inactive thyroid hormone. So I went back to her and I said, did some research, did my Dr. Google thing. And it turns out this is inactive. It has to convert over and become active T3. Why don't we just use some T3? She goes, well, that's not standard of care. So I don't do that.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm sure everybody gets told that, right? A lot of your listeners are resonating right now. So I left and I said, I'm going to find someone who does that. And that's what led me into functional medicine. My functional medicine practitioner saved my life, like literally saved my life and gave me it back in my 20s. Wow. If I had stopped, and I often think this, if I had stopped at, let's say, doctor number 5, because I mean, after 5 medical practitioners tell you that it's all in your head, you're normal, everything is fine, just eat less and exercise more, it would be very easy at that point for me to say, okay, I accept it. These are 5 answers. I'm just going to have to live this way.
Yeah.
Or learn to live this way. But I didn't. And thank God I didn't.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my goodness. Ugh.
How did she touched your throat? How did she know that it was a thyroid problem just by touching your throat?
Well, I give her credit. She did actually listen to my symptoms. Yeah. So I would go into these doctors with literally my diet written out because I wanted them to see this really is what I'm eating. I'm not slamming some donuts on the back end. Like, this is what I'm eating. And I told her the weight gain is is rapid. It was a rapid onset. I can't control it. Nothing is taking it off. And by then I was getting tired. I was losing my hair. I was constipated. So all of those symptoms fit right in the thyroid.
Yeah. Right. Well, and just in case our audience doesn't know, your thyroid gland, that's where it's located.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
Okay.
So
we should have filled you in on that, Gabe.
So
no, I'm the one asking the silly questions. So
okay. Many people probably don't know that. But that's where it's located. So you can palpate, although barely any doctors do that anymore that I've seen or heard of.
Touch the thyroid gland.
Yeah, they just start. That's just not really a thing, which is really interesting. Well,
that's kind of similar to your story though, because your hair started falling out.
Oh yeah.
Annie started getting Raynaud's, cold hands.
Well, I thought I had Raynaud's because my fingers and toes would turn white, but now that I'm optimized on NDT and some extra T3, no more. So I'm kind of
good. No That's awesome. I like to hear that.
Yeah, totally. But I have a similar story. I think what drove it's hard to say, because kind of like you, when I originally was having these symptoms, I didn't recognize them for what they were. And one of my things that I want to do, one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on, is to talk about just in general, what are the symptoms of hypothyroidism? What are some of the common causes of it? Why is it so prevalent with women in particular? And then, how do you talk to your doctor about it? But because I was experiencing all of the classic symptoms, like I wasn't handling cold well. I mean, you remember, I would just be so cold.
No, I remember, and all of a sudden your hands would get really cold really quick too. It was really
so
funny.
Uncomfortable. Hair shed, constipation, weight gain, which, like you, Amie, when you're in the fitness game and you're training really hard, it's not normal, right? It's not normal when you're like, no, I really am not just eating donuts at night and not telling anybody. Nothing changed. Diet didn't change. Nothing changed. But I chalk it up back in the day to too much keto and too much CrossFit. I think that's what tanked me. And I'd love to talk about kind of the stress piece of this a little bit for women, because, I think it definitely plays a role. But anyways, similar story. Why do you think, how prevalent do you think hypothyroidism or Hashimoto's, and maybe you can tell our audience kind of how to differentiate between the two, how prevalent do you think it actually is in the regular population right now? And how much of it do you think goes undiagnosed? Like, you may not have an actual number to put on that, but I know you just work with so many people. What are your thoughts on that?
So stats that I've seen actually written, and I believe I got this stat from A4M, is 60 million are undiagnosed. So 120 million have hypothyroidism, and they're factoring half of those are walking around and they don't even know it.
And they just don't know.
They don't know it.
So that sounds like about half of America's population.
Yeah. And honestly, I say this all the time. If you're a woman over 40, I said it earlier, you probably have a thyroid problem. So to answer your question, I'll actually get into the why.
Yeah, please do.
So you have Hashimoto's and hypothyroidism. Mm-hmm. Hashimoto's is the autoimmune form of hypothyroidism. So hypo, low, and slow. Just remember that. Hypothyroidism is going to produce low metabolism, low mood, slow brain function, slow gastric motility, i.e. constipation. Mm-hmm. So everything in your body just kind of lows and slows. Hashimoto's is hypothyroidism, but if you picture you have a bunch of soldiers in your body and they're very confused. They're not working for you to fight like viruses and infections. They are working against you because they think that your thyroid is a bad guy, that it's an invader. So they go out and they beat up the invader. They start a war on what they think is a bad guy. And that's with any autoimmune condition. So if you have celiac, it's your small intestine and the villi. If it's rheumatoid arthritis, it's your joints. So with Hashimoto's, it's your thyroid. So they're going out, they're beating up your thyroid. And when you get beaten up every day, you're probably not going to work really well. Mm-hmm. So the production of thyroid hormones from the thyroid gland after a day of war, probably not really good. Those tend to go down. So now your thyroid hormones are low and slow as well. And since the thyroid gland is the master gland and it controls everything from our metabolism to our circulation, our cold tolerance, our gastric motility, our brain function, our heart rate, our blood pressure, everything. If that is off, it's going to affect every single system in your body. And every single cell in your body has a receptor site on it for thyroid hormone, specifically T3 thyroid hormone. So when we're looking at Hashimoto's, and let's take the grand number of hypothyroidism, 95% of all those with hypothyroidism have Hashimoto's, and most of them are women.
I've heard that stat, which is really, really interesting to me. Why do you think? Two things. Why do you think there are so many poorly functioning thyroids out there right now, whether they're diagnosed or not? Why do you think it's such a problem? And then secondly, why is it so often women?
So let's break that down. So number one, it's often women because of the fluctuating hormones. We have more fluctuating hormones in our body than men do.
Yes.
And men have more testosterone. So even if we're optimal with our testosterone, still the total value is going to be, or should be, unless you're a bodybuilder taking too many steroids, should be lower than a man.
Right.
So men should have, 800 to 1100 nanograms per deciliter of total testosterone. Women should have maybe 50 to 200. So we just have less testosterone.
Yeah, it's a huge, but I mean, getting women, I want to get you back on some other time to talk about all the hormones, testosterone in particular, getting doctors to even let you go to 50 is also a problem.
I know that's a whole other conversation, right?
But you're saying that testosterone is kind of protective. Is that kind of what you're saying? Interesting.
Bingo.
Interesting.
It's very protective. So here we are, we have fluctuating hormones. Think pregnancy, post-pregnancy, perimenopause, and menopause. And this is just one part of the equation.
Right.
So we have more fluctuating hormones. Those fluctuating hormones can turn on that Hashimoto's switch. So we have lower testosterone, lower protection, fluctuating hormones. Boom, that switch turns to the on position. And that's where you hear women be like, it was after my second kid. It was after I turned 41 that it all went to hell in a handbasket. The weight came on, the energy went down, the whole thing. So that's part of the equation. And then, of course, we can bring in the environmental toxins, the exposure, the chemicals. Oh, my God, it's just such an onslaught to our body that's a stressor as well that can trigger Hashimoto's.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. We've talked a lot on this podcast just in terms of other aspects of health, life in general, how women definitely seem to be more sensitive to stress. And so it does make sense to me that our thyroids and everything that's involved in that, it's easier for us to tank.
I want to push on that just a little harder.
It is for dudes.
Yeah. I'm slowly working through Tucker's interview with Callie and Casey.
Oh yeah. I haven't listened to that one yet.
But one of the things they point out in the beginning is just how unhealthy America is. And they give stats and,
they're pretty good on those topics.
Yeah. And then they kind of, one of the statements that they made that I've thought about this before, but when people were fat in the 1920s, well, they ended up in the circus because it was just such an anomaly.
It was very rare.
It's very rare to see fat people and kind of in that era. But then, fast forward now, it's like obesity rates are obviously sky high. Half of America is, basically pre-diabetic. All this stuff. It's thyroid hyperthyroidism. A newer development in America's population. Is it? I mean, was it going on in the 1800s, or it's just a little odd to me that all of a sudden all these problems are blooming, and now we can verbalize and diagnose it.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that? That's a good question.
No, I mean, hypothyroidism has been around for a long time because actually the first thyroid medication was natural desiccated thyroid.
Yeah.
It was just thyroid glandular from a pig. And then, enter Big Pharma, Synthroid, Levo, they came in. And basically, we're telling these doctors that we're treating thyroid patients successfully with NDT because we were giving them T4 and T3 combined in that pill, in that glandular. They said, we've done some studies and we really feel that this T4, it's supposed to convert over and become T3 in the body. So all you need to do is give T4. And they would pound that into the medical system and into the medical colleges. And then it would become kind of a nod, wink, wink. That all you need to do is tell your doctors to prescribe T4, right? Yeah. They don't actually need to prescribe T3 or NDT. We're just making sure because we just gave you $1 billion grant. So we just want to make sure you're all on the same page. And that happens. And that happens obviously beyond thyroid medication.
Right. Oh, yeah.
But to your point, thyroid issues have been around forever.
But
because it's a gland that can go haywire.
If Big Pharma can sell T4 and T3 and make more money, right? Why don't they just do that? Why are they just pushing for T4? that to me, financial incentives there would make me want to say, you need T3, T4, T2, and you need it all, and I make more money.
I know. Well, I kind of wish the makers of liothyronine or Cytomel would throw some money at the medical colleges and universities, because then we might be actually helping people. You need that T3. And I don't care if it's a script. That's fine. I mean, that's how you're going to get it. You need a prescription for it. It is a thyroid medication, a thyroid hormone replacement. But the key is to do it in sync with your body. So we need to know, do you convert T4 to T3? Do you have issues converting T4 to T3? Are you T3 only? Like me, I convert nothing. If you give me T4, I'll go 25 pounds heavier again. I'll be right back to where I started. So I'm T3 only. So it's all about finding what treatment, what thyroid hormone replacement in what combination at what dose is going to work for you. And then I don't care, but I don't have the answer as to why Synthroid and T4 and Levo, even the generic T4, is pushed so hard. And that is the standard of care.
Yeah, no, I've experienced that with myself and also with so many women that I've worked with. In fact, when someone tells me that their doctor puts them on Armour, which is an NDT, that's what I'm on, Gabe, just for reference. I'm shocked. I'm like, who's your doctor? Like, where did you even find someone that would even suggest that? Because it's been so maligned, which is just really, it's really strange. I don't totally have an answer for that either. So Amie, I want to spend the rest of the time, that we do have left here. I'm trying to think of the best questions to ask you that's going to help different categories of people. So I think there's plenty of women walking around out there, just like you described. Maybe they've had a couple kids, maybe they hit 40, maybe they're in perimenopause, something, or maybe they're me. They did a little too much CrossFit, a little too much fasting, too much stress on the body, not enough food. We like to do that. And so, and they just, their body starts going downhill. Usually what really shakes us is that weight loss resistance or that weight gain when we have not changed anything. Or in fact, sometimes people exercise even harder, right? Or they eat even less and they still gain weight. But then all those other hypo symptoms, the brain fog, the low energy, the joint aches, the dry skin, like you said, just all systems slowing down. And that's a really nice way to think about it, because that really is what's happening. So there's those people. Often they're not getting any blood work at all. If they are getting blood work, the doctor might look at a TSH. Do you want to explain to our audience really quickly what TSH is, what is free T3, what is free T4, what is reverse T3, and maybe, how they could talk to their doctor and ask for specific labs that would actually help? Because I will say I was hypothyroid for a very long time with a very normal TSH, which we hear all the time. But my free T3, when we finally looked at it, was a 2.0.
Right.
That's pretty low.
Yeah.
And I felt it. I felt it. Yeah. So maybe speak to that group, because I think obviously, as you know, there's a lot of them.
Oh my gosh, that's who I see every day, especially when patients come into the practice from conventional medicine, or even from functional medicine, but from conventional medicine as well. And probably going back, if I could look back at what those 6 doctors tested on me, it was most likely TSH and maybe free T4. And just like you, mine was coming back normal. It was within normal range, we'll say. It was within the standard lab value normal range.
Below a 5.
So I was being told, I was being told I was normal. I'm fine, I'm normal. So then when my functional medicine practitioner actually tested thoroughly, like you said, let's look at free T3. Now, why is that important? So T3 is the active thyroid hormone. We said T4 is inactive. So if you're on T4 only, Synthroid, Levo, Euthyrox, that is T4 only, and that has to convert over and become T3, the active thyroid hormone, to get to your cell. So it's like a lock and key mechanism at the cell level that T3 can put the lock into the key and turn it to give you a metabolism, to grow your hair, to light up your brain, to give you energy. But T4 does not match up with that lock and key. So there's no receptor site on your cell for T4. So we have to convert it. So number one, we want to know how much of the active thyroid hormone do you have? Yours obviously was incredibly low. It's probably actually flagged low. But when we're looking at free T3, you ultimately, the optimal value, not just normal, we want you optimal. We want that in the upper quadrant of the range. So if you take something like a LabCorp that starts at a 2.3 and goes to 4.4, you want to be, if you cut that in fourths, you want to be in that upper quadrant. So like a 3.8, 4, maybe even a 4.4, maybe even over that at a 4.6,
high.
depending on what your optimal is.
Yeah, high.
Yeah, high.
Yeah.
You want that high. And then we want to test reverse T3, and we want that below at 12. Why? Because reverse T3 is the anti-thyroid hormone. So when that T4 is choosing its path, it has 2 paths to choose from. It can go down the path and become free T3. That's good. That's awesome. That's what it should do. Or it can go down the path and become reverse T3. Now, that conversion process, I always say it's like running 5 Tough Mudders. It's not easy for your body to do. The medical system says, oh, well, this is what the body should do. Right. But what can interfere with it? Elevated insulin, low magnesium, low vitamin D, low iodine, low selenium, stress, high cortisol, a genetic SNP. I mean, estrogen dominance. There's all these factors that, quite frankly, most of us are dealing with at least one of them.
Right.
And like you said earlier, Gabe, most of us are insulin resistant. So right there, that's going to impair conversion. We want to test that reverse T3 to see, are you converting, or is your body literally in lockdown survival mode? And when your body is in lockdown survival mode, do you think you're going to lose weight? Do you think your body cares when it's fighting for your life? Because your body literally thinks you're laying there dying in the ICU or the ER after a traumatic accident. When you're lying there dying, is your body thinking, we really should grow this luscious head of hair and give this person energy and brain function so they can solve the world's problems? No, all of that is shutting down.
Just
in fact, you don't even have to poop every day.
No,
when you're lying there, right?
and you won't. Yeah.
And you won't.
You won't.
And you won't with elevated reverse T3. So those 2 markers are the most important to test.
That's really helpful. So just for those listening, if you are someone who's on T4 only, and the more you take, the worse you feel, that would maybe be a really good indicator, at least to go get that reverse T3 tested. And if it's through the roof, that means that all you're doing is jacking up your reverse T3. The more T4 you take, you might be somebody who, just like you, Amie, and it seems to me there's more and more of you out there who needs to take T3 only.
Yeah, I would say about 20% of my patient population are true T3 only.
Yeah.
Some people will think that they are because they hear me talk about it. They're like, well, should I do T3 only? And here's the thing. If you have to think of T4 and T3 as a savings and a checking account. The T4, now I never want you to just live out of your savings account. That would suck. So we don't want you on T4 only. We want to give you some checking. So let's bring in the T3. Now, your body is literally using the checking account and then drawing from the savings when it needs to. So it's always nice to have a little bit of T4 on board. But if you can't, you can't. Like, I live from my checking all the time. So I just have to keep putting T3 into the checking account daily, twice a day, in order for me to have enough thyroid hormone. I don't get the luxury of having a savings account. But if we can give you a little savings, and I'm not saying it has to be, your T4 has to be higher than your T3. I'm not saying there's no dose requirement, but if we can give you just a little bit, that's the best case scenario. But if you truly are a T3 only candidate, then let's use T3 only so you can have your life back.
Right. It's a definitely not an ideal situation, because normally, how many times a day do you have to dose your T3? I know it's a varied split dose situation usually.
I do twice a day. Some of my patients will do 3 and 4 times a day, depending on just their tolerance and how their body is responding.
Yeah. So it's a little more work, but yeah, when you're feeling so bad, it's worth it. You'll do anything when you feel that
exactly.
bad. Okay, that's really helpful. So that is kind of the message for all these women who are walking around with all of those symptoms. And I think part of the problem is that, number one, doctors are, people aren't doing blood work, and they need to be. Doctors are only looking at TSH, maybe a free T4. And so a lot of hypothyroidism is just flying under the radar. But I think also, and this was true for me also, because I have 3 children. I'm a busy mom. I work outside the home. I'm doing all these things, And so this sort of like tired mom syndrome, I feel like just feeling really bad all the time is sort of normalized. And I wonder if that is one of the reasons that a lot of times women don't go get the thyroid help that they could be getting, because they're just like, well, this is just how it is. Like, this is just how I feel. I don't sleep well.
I'm a mom.
I'm a
get
mom.
Up at night.
I'm tired.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, what do you think about that, Amie?
Oh, 100,000,000%. You just nailed it. I think, a couple different things happen. Either women, just like you said, you're tired mom.
Yeah.
And that's really a time when Hashimoto's is most likely presenting itself. I always say, they give this postpartum thyroiditis as a diagnostic term. I'm like, it's not postpartum thyroiditis. It's Hashimoto's that got turned on.
Right.
And you're going to have, it's not just going to go away after you crest your postpartum period. It's going to be there for the rest of your life because that switch just got turned in the on position.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say tired mom syndrome. And then you're just getting older.
Yeah.
And people would just be like, well, I did just turn 50. So things are slowing down. Bullshit. No, not at all. Yeah. You deserve to be vibrant and strong and healthy and be that, what I always say, be that badass human you're meant to be till the day you die. Yeah. There's not a time in life where it's like after this age, just throw in the towel and hang it up and you're going to feel like garbage because you're just getting older.
Yeah, no, and I think a lot of us have just sort of swallowed that untruth. And it's sad because, I mean, of course we all get older and there's certain, things that come along with aging and that's completely fine. But it's like, if you can feel better, why wouldn't you? Especially with something as basic as taking an NDT or whatever you end up having to do. So that's baffling to me.
got a question that might interrupt some things, but like, how does this play out for men? It seems like, would men tend to veer more on the Hashimoto side of things?
Yes, I'm glad you asked because we don't want to leave out you guys, right?
No, poor guy.
I'm doing well though. I'm just asking
all that testosterone
for others. Yeah,
they're lucky.
I'm good.
Yeah.
So you're going to get hit less with thyroid, but when you do get hit, it affects your testosterone. So every male patient that I've ever had that we discover there's a thyroid problem because of that downstream action, because the thyroid is the master gland, I end up seeing low testosterone. Now, low testosterone can exist without a thyroid problem, but it's rare that we see a thyroid problem in men without low testosterone combined with it.
So does that mean let's say the solution for a man might be like, is it in the T3, T4 realm, or is it different?
No, it's the same. I mean, we treat thyroid, hypothyroidism, Hashimoto's the same, whether it's male, female. The dose is also not dependent on your weight. I got that question the other day. I'm like, no. It has nothing to do with your weight. It's all really just tailored to you, your body, your chemistry, how your body's processing it, how you're absorbing the medication, what you need. I also have a very unsupported hypothesis that type A drivers like yourself, you need a little bit more T3, because we're doing, we're thinking, we're going, you're a mom of three. I mean, you're just going to need a little bit more than, let's say, somebody just with a nice, regular salary job, they come home, not a lot of like, go activity.
Right. Someone more chill. You're probably right. I'm sure it correlates. That makes perfect sense. I have a couple like more lifestyle-y questions that I want to ask you before we go, but there is another group of women, I think, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on this, who have been diagnosed, their TSH got to a 6 or something, and their doctor was like, okay, have some Levo. But they're on at least for them, what appears to be a low dose, and they are still, and their doctor's like, you're good because we brought your TSH back down into the range, so this is all the Levo we're going to give you. And they're still hypothyroid as far as their symptoms are concerned. And I run into these women all the time, and they don't really understand because they're like, well, I'm taking the medicine. It must just be something else. Can you talk about that a little bit also?
Oh, yes. It's such a great question because I'm even going to pull in functional and integrative practitioners. And thank God we have them. Thank God functional medicine is coming to the forefront. People are really realizing that they have to invest in themselves to up-level their health and to extend longevity and to get the care that they really need and deserve. However, there is this trend that I see. So to your point, conventional medicine, here's a little baby dose of Levo. Oh, good, your TSH is fine.
Yeah, a baby dose.
A baby dose. And then functional and integrative medicine, they'll give baby doses of NDT or they'll add in T3, but they're like, no more than 10 micrograms. That's my limit. And I'm like, well, I take 150. So I would be totally screwed if I worked with you because you would stop me at 10 and I would never, ever be optimized.
Yes.
The problem with giving these baby doses is that any thyroid hormone will create a negative feedback signal. So it's the hypothalamus pituitary thyroid axis. You take thyroid hormone and your pituitary is always sensing. It's like a feeler. It's like, okay, is there enough thyroid hormone here to do the job? If there is, then it gets to quiet down and it doesn't send out TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, to the thyroid, which is basically just poking the thyroid saying, hey, please wake up and do your job. So as TSH goes up, the pituitary is screaming at the thyroid, like, wake up, come on, you're not doing your job. But if there's thyroid hormone in the body, it goes quiet. So now it's just enough thyroid hormone to shut up the pituitary. It's not enough thyroid hormone to optimize you. And now you're going to make less thyroid hormone on your own than you did before you started the baby dose. So those baby doses are actually more detrimental than taking nothing at all.
Yes, I 100% agree with that. And that's why I wanted to hear just everything that you just said, because I am to the point now, because I will work with a woman, they'll have all the hypothyroid symptoms. I'll be like, okay, well, you need to go push for it more than a TSH, get your free T3. And it comes back and it's like a 2.8. And it's like, yeah, you're hypothyroid. And then their doctor gives them like 60 milligrams of Armour. And what happens is they feel good for a little bit. And then they start to tank because of I believe, the down regulation that you just talked about, where their own body was like, well, the small amount that I was making, I'm not going to make anymore. I don't need to. And then they end up more hypothyroid than they were to begin with. And then they're like, this doesn't work. It's not thyroid. It's something else. And I'm like, listen, if you're going to get on medication, you got to be in it to up that dose to the point where you overcome that, your own body's down regulation. And then you give yourself that much more to whatever that ends up being for you, that will get you to an optimal place. And a lot of people, their doctors just never take them there.
Yeah, or the people actually hinder their own progress. You know, I don't want to take more medication. I don't want to take a prescription.
Right.
And this is really where I like to drive this message home, that when we are talking about thyroid medication, we are talking about thyroid hormone replacement. So just like bioidentical hormone replacement, or if you were type 1 diabetic, guess what? You have to take insulin. That's a hormone. Right. When you are taking hormones to replace hormones that are no longer being properly made by your body, that's hormone replacement. That's in a different category.
Right.
I completely understand not wanting to be on Band-Aid medications like the statins and the antidepressants and the sleeping pills and the PPIs.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. Say no to that and find the root cause. But thyroid medication is replacing hormones.
Right. So on that point, one of our listeners just said, I am on thyroid meds. I have been for a long time. I've been trying to fight this. How can I fight this? I wonder if, and I might be reading into this question, but I have had a lot of people be like, how do I get off? And I would love to hear your answer, but I feel like, especially if you're on a hefty dose, getting off would be pretty dang hard. What are your thoughts on that?
I would say when you are optimized, you are not going to be asking that question. Like, you would have to pry my thyroid hormone out of my dead cold hands.
That's how I feel. But maybe it's because we were so bad. You know what I mean? Maybe it just depends on how bad of a dark hole you were in before. Because I would be like, I'll take this for life. I don't care. Like, I will pry it out of my hands. I have backup ones. I have phone alarms. My kids are always like, oh, Mom, thyroid time. Like, yeah. So it doesn't bother me, but some people, I don't know. Some people are just medication averse, period. They just don't want to take stuff. But I agree with you. Like, if you just weigh the cost versus having to pop a little pill, I'm like, I'll take the pill.
But isn't what you're taking like almost natural? Is it more of a natural thyroid?
Well, it's NDT. So it is thyroid replacement hormone, but it's porcine normally. Is that right?
Yeah. Yours is natural desiccated. And I have no problem though with even the synthetic. I call them biosynth because they're biologically identical.
Right.
Although, yes, made in a manufacturing facility for medications, whatever. But they are biologically identical to what your thyroid gland produces.
When some people do the best on those, they just do. And you just, whatever is going to work for people. That was really great. Why, really quickly, why do you think, I don't know this for sure. I know Levo has just been the standard of care for a really long time, but also I noticed that doctors seem very, very, very adverse to a TSH that is suppressed, depressed, low, whatever you want to call it. Why do you think that is? Because I know a lot of people who are on a hefty dose of NDT, maybe doing T3 only, that is going to drive your TSH down. Why are they so against that?
They're uneducated. They're uninformed. They're uneducated. They have no idea how the thyroid and the whole system actually works, the HPT axis. So if you think about it, if we break it down with basic biology, And just really before I get into that, I literally just received an email today from just a stranger, but she's a medical doctor. And she said she has been studying with her mentor, and he's driven home the point of testing free T3 and reverse T3 and really relies on those two markers. I'm like, that's great.
That is.
And he's been villainized, and now they're coming after her for suppression of TSH.
Oh my gosh.
And it's like, oh my God, what are we doing? So if we break it down, if you, just like I said earlier, that negative feedback loop, the pituitary shouting at the thyroid gland, if we have that beautiful active thyroid hormone on board, what do you think the pituitary is going to do? It's going to chill.
Yeah.
It's going to get quiet. It's going to be like, we're good here. I don't even really have to speak today.
Right.
So my TSH is a 0.0007. It's pretty much non-existent.
On T3 only,
I've been on T3 only for 25 years. I mean, of course it is.
Your heart hasn't stopped. Yeah. Your
I'm
bones haven't
good.
broken.
Yeah, no AFib here. I just had a DEXA scan. My bones are rock solid.
Yeah.
So all of that information that doctors were fed at some point, whether it was a bad study like the Women's Health Initiative, whether it's just the mantra that they're being taught that suppression of TSH will cause AFib and bone loss and osteoporosis.
Right.
We know that's not true, but they're still holding on to that.
Have there been actual studies done demonstrating that, or will nobody fund that at this point in history?
Yeah, I have seen a couple studies basically debunking, like saying low TSH does not cause bone loss or AFib. But they're not widely out there.
Yeah.
They're not widely funded. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, it's been baffling to me. Well, can we talk just a little before we let you go about just kind of like lifestyle, and then also maybe even just some other key like nutrients or blood markers that people might need to pay attention to that could either pull thyroid down or mimic hypothyroid symptoms, or certain things that we need to be eating, ingesting that's going to help prop up our thyroid.
Maybe before we turn that corner, we have a listener here real quick.
Sure. Pause. Pin.
Basically, he used to be a fitness trainer, and when tested, they said his lab work was normal in the testosterone levels. So this guy Clint is asking, in my case, could it be due to diabetes?
So when we're talking about testosterone, first of all, and this is a whole other podcast, but I'll touch on it.
We'll do it.
So guys, testosterone standard lab value range starts at a 285. And recently I've seen it cut off at 900. And I'm like, wait a minute, you're cutting them off at 900? That's just the beginning. So male optimal total testosterone should be at over an 800. I don't care what your age. If you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, I want to see that 1,000, 1,100, 1,200 naturally. Now, once we start replacement, that might go up a little bit higher than that, depending on when we test you, but I naturally want to see that number pretty elevated. For him, it could be diabetes. It could be insulin resistance driving that low testosterone. It could be a thyroid problem. It could be environmental toxins, estrogen dominance. It's really hard to say what's doing it and what's causing the testosterone to be low. So that's going to basically lead into the next question of what other labs do we test on hypothyroid patients? Yeah, let's do all the sex hormones. Let's do that insulin. Let's do a hemoglobin A1C. Let's look at your glucose, and then let's look at your nutrient status like vitamin D and magnesium and selenium and iodine. I love iodine for lowering reverse T3. So there's micronutrients, there's sex hormones, there's the blood sugar markers, inflammation markers. That is really, when we test thoroughly, that's what gives us that full picture of then what you have to do lifestyle wise in your life, in your diet, high cortisol, stress reduction, all of that. And that kind of guides us in what type of lifestyle management to do.
Yeah. No, that's really good. So the ones that you listed, vitamin D, magnesium, zinc, selenium. So eat your Brazil nut, your 2 Brazil nuts a day or whatever it is. And then
Brazil.
Yeah, and then Brazil nuts. Iodine, this might be lost on some of our audience here, but really touchy subject in the thyroid world. I mean, there's some people who are like against it, and there's other people who are like mega dosing it. Where do you fall in the iodine conversation?
Yeah, I love it. So again, let's just pull back in basic biology, right? Every cell in our body needs iodine. Iodine is antiviral, antifungal, antibacterial. It competes at the cell level for bromide, fluorine, chloride, or fluoride, fluorine, fluoride. The halogens, the toxic halogens. And those 3 halogens are so toxic to the thyroid in addition to the rest of our body.
Right.
So if you don't have enough iodine, and please, you are being exposed to those 3 halogens every day. I mean, if you have carpet, if you have clothing, if you live near a golf course, if it's in our food, fluorides in our water, chlorines in our water. I mean, just we're being exposed all the time. So if you don't have enough iodine, then those toxic halides will attach to that receptor site instead.
Right.
So iodine is a fantastic way to protect your cells from those toxic halides as well.
Yeah. And our body does not produce it. Correct. You have to get it somehow through your diet, through something. Yeah. How do you, are you one of those like just eat more seaweed, or do you actually supplement with it? What do you do?
Supplement with it. Yeah. Everything. And I spoke with Dr. David Brownstein. I think he is just the guru when it comes to iodine. I've read all his books. It really comes down to supplementation, because you're not even going to get the low end, like a 12.5, 6.25 to 12.5 would be the low end of dosing. 25 to 50 milligrams. Let me say that. Not micrograms. Yeah, milligrams. Not the RDA of like 100 micrograms. I'm talking milligrams. You have to supplement with it.
Okay. And
so what's iodine gonna do in this process?
Well,
so iodine, it supports the thyroid. So it supports your own natural thyroid hormone production. Okay. It also helps with that T4 to T3 conversion. Okay. And then, I mean, I'll take extra iodine. I actually spray it up my nose if I'm on a plane. I'll take extra if I'm traveling. I mean, the viral protection is like amazing.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That actually, a lot of people were talking about that over COVID. So that, it's kind of it's a multi-purpose. It's a multifaceted thing. That's a good point about the iodine. Well, maybe, do you have anything else you want to add? I have one more kind of like last thing I want to ask her. Okay. This has been so good. And I feel like I could talk about thyroid all day long, but I understand not everybody loves to nerd out about thyroid. But Amie, talk to me a little bit about the whole keto movement, the carnivore movement, the intermittent fasting stuff is so big right now. I'm not against it inherently. I think it can be used wisely, surgically. Obviously, insulin resistance is a huge issue. Some people need that in their life in wise doses, but we have talked about how women do tend to be more sensitive to stress. A lot of the type A type women who are like hitting the gym hard, hitting life hard, they have kids, they have a job. They're like, and I eat one meal a day, and then I only eat meat when I eat. And give our listeners a message about how our nutrition, how often we eat, how hard we beat ourselves up in the gym, how that really can affect thyroid health.
Yeah. So I'm with you. I like intermittent fasting, carnivore, keto, whatever is your jam. Maybe you're diabetic and you're really looking at lowering that A1C and insulin. I like all of them if done properly. Right. So carnivore, fantastic for lowering inflammation, great for autoimmune conditions. I personally couldn't do it long term. I could probably do it for a short stint. And then I would have to bring in, at least some vegetables or something, some berries. And I know that some carnivore people are getting a little bit more lenient now. Like, you can have the dark chocolate and the honey and the fruit, and that's fine. Of them.
You get to year 5 and they start being cool with the berries.
Right, exactly.
It's pretty funny.
So, it's like, I believe carnivore should be done short term. I believe keto needs to be done properly. We can't go crazy with the dairy. My gosh, every keto recipe has like a block of cream cheese in it. Right. So you have to find that sweet spot and really make it your own. Not going crazy with the dairy, but maybe not keeping your carbs low for long periods of time, because that has also been shown to affect the thyroid and reduce production of T3.
Yeah.
And then the fasting, I actually just did a podcast on fasting for my audience. You can do the 12, 14, up to 16 hours, especially if you're a woman. Guys can get away with longer fasting than we can.
Per usual.
Our bodies tend to react in a cortisol releasing, this is a stressor on the body kind of reaction. So what I find with my ladies, I'm sure you see this too, is if they do these OMADs or even 18 hours of fasting, you're not getting in the protein. You're not. You're going to lose muscle. You're not going to get in your protein. And your hair loss is going to increase if you're not getting in protein. So there's detriments to fasting too long. And then, yes, we do see an effect on thyroid function as well if someone is an over faster.
Yeah.
It's just like over exercising. It's a stressor on the body.
Yeah. And, if you do what people like to do and do both of those at the same time, that really can put a thyroid in the tank.
This just makes me think of, still the why. Why is our society dealing with massive, pre-diabetic or weight problems? Or, thyroid. My sister actually, I'm not gonna say her name, but my sister.
Way to name her.
She had low thyroid, dysfunctional thyroid since she was 6 years old. I remember she's taken thyroid medicine her whole life, but it just seems to me that this is just becoming a bigger and bigger problem. Is it becoming a bigger problem because we've finally been able to put language to it, or diagnose it, or is it becoming a bigger problem? What's the driving underlying cause for this?
Yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
I would say both. So I think there's definitely more awareness. There's more people in this space talking about, here's what you have to get, like yourself, get tested. Here are the tests that you need to ask your doctor for. We need to look at the full picture, get beyond that TSH. But I think it's also just we're not living in the same world that our parents lived in. Even we can even just go that far back in generations. They lived in a world that was less toxic, and then our grandparents lived in a world that was less toxic than they did. So with the increased EMFs, toxins, pesticides, glyphosate, BPA, the onslaught of our bodies, it's hard to even keep up.
Yeah.
Even if you're the best biohacker in the world, it is hard to protect yourself and hard to keep up. And we know that those physical, chemical, emotional, mental stressors definitely start tanking the thyroid and turn on Hashimoto's. Well, we are a very driven type A, overwork, overdo, overplay, over-exercise, overdrink, overeat society that it's just, we're just seeing more and more thyroid problems pop up.
Yeah.
We've hypothesized on the show that I agree with you that it seems to be like there's a number of kind of modern accommodations that have I think set us up for where we're at. We've joked on our show before, we're the first generation or the first country in the world ever to have a fridge and have food in our house and access to it 24/7 and cold and ready to go. We don't have to go out and kill the cow to eat our steak. It's just there. Bag of chips, we have just access. It's a blessing and a curse, because we have access to all this food. It's more abundant in America than it ever has been in the history of the universe, kind of thing. So you have the food thing. And then in addition to like me, I have a desk job. So you have access, to massive amounts of food, refrigerator, so forth. And then you have a generation that now is walking, working out, using their body less. And then now we're kind of discovering that, well, you put that together and you don't handle it well. You don't think through the blessing of what that is happening, because it is a blessing. But then we're not handling that blessing well in all this. Just some thoughts there.
Yeah, I would agree with all of that as well. I think it's the answer is layered for sure.
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
the fun.
Yeah, multifaceted for sure.
Yeah, and I just see that the one thing I don't want to and we push back on the show all the time. I don't want to create like a hypochondriac, audience.
Right.
Yeah, right.
But an aware audience.
Yeah, an aware audience where it's kind of like we're falling into another ditch, So, Big Pharma wants to push all this medication on us. Well, the naturopath doctors also have a solution for medication or some form of natural solution for us too. And I don't want to kind of end up in both those ditches. But that's why when Annie first started going through this whole discovery thing of her thyroid and everything, one thing we were constantly trying to figure out is, okay, what's objective in all this? Because Annie would say, I feel this, or I'm getting Raynaud's, or my hair is falling out or something. So we'd see these symptoms, but what can we objectively measure in all this? And that's why I like the blood work panel stuff, is because you can kind of objectively see, oh, this is what's going on, or this is low, this is high. And then you even kind of got to sort through what the medical industrial complex sets some of the standards for what's low and high.
Right. The ranges and
In
what's
the ranges.
what's in range versus what's optimal. Well, I
all
think
that.
also, so that people don't just become a hypochondriac, or they don't just become like, well, I'll just pop a pill, like a pill for every ill kind of a thing.
Yeah.
I think that the lifestyle piece really, really matters. And I know that you agree with this, Amie, because I've heard you talk about it. Like, it can be life-saving and life-altering if your thyroid really is in the tank when you finally get on the right dose and the right kind, even of thyroid replacement hormone. And I don't wish how bad that feels being that low on anyone. It is just awful. So I think it's awesome that we have the ability to give that to someone. But I also tell people, if you don't de-stress your life, stop trying to do so much. That's one problem that I think modern women have, that they didn't have as much years ago. Like you said, even my mom's generation, definitely not my grandma's generation. It's like, what are we thinking? Like women just like, I'm going to work full time and I'm going to have 5 kids and I'm going to do that. It's like, this is insane. Like no wonder your body is not thriving. Like you're doing way too much. And then if you don't put good food in your body, if you don't exercise, like it's not going to fix everything. The lifestyle, like you have a lot of agency, in what you do and how you feel. So the lifestyle piece really, they're synergistic with each other. It has to come hand in hand, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Totally agree.
Last question, we'll let you go. We just had one listener talk about levo and iodine and ask, are they similar to iron and vitamin C?
Oh, what do you think about that?
I'll try to piece that question together. So if you're taking levo, you're on T4 only, should you be taking iodine? Well, my theory is that everybody should be taking iodine, whether on T3 only, T4, T3, NDT, T4 only. It doesn't matter because it's going to help with that conversion. So yeah, if you're stuck on T4 only, you probably have a fighting chance of converting some of that if you take iodine. Now, iodine, and this is a whole other discussion, but it really is about going low and slow. So titrating up, it gets a bad reputation because a lot of practitioners will say, okay, let's just take 25 milligrams of iodine. And then you go hyper and you feel like it's like this thyroid storm and you're icky and sweaty. So it really is about titrating up very low and slow. So when we're looking at the ferritin vitamin C, that's a great analogy because you do have to take vitamin C or iron and vitamin C because we're trying to increase ferritin. You do have to take vitamin C with iron for absorption.
Right.
Do you have to take iodine with T4? Probably, but there's not a direct correlation with absorption there.
Interesting. Yeah, not a bad question though.
Yeah.
Well,
really.
Thank you, Dr. Amie, for coming on the show. Really appreciate your time.
So much.
All the way from Iowa.
Yes.
We thank you for tuning in. And my wife's very much greatly appreciated your work in this field. So
very much so. So everybody check out Dr. Amie
What's her
Hornaman,
podcast?
The Thyroid Fixer. Yes.
Yes. Thyroid Fixer podcast.
Fantastic. You're a great interviewer. You get great interviews. I learned something from every single one. I couldn't recommend it more.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Love being on here. Thanks, guys.
Man, thank you very much.
Again, if you guys want to be in conversation with us, email us at wrenchmedia@gmail.com. School starts back up for our kids, but we should be back in the studio next week still anyways, right?
Yeah, we should be actually more regular now that the children
the schools
are going back. Yes.
So make sure you guys download the app and go to prodigalamerica.com if you want to join us at our conference in October. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next week here on Water Break.
Yep, see you next week.
In modern fitness culture, temporary aesthetic beauty often comes at the expense of the body, soul, and true long-term vitality. At Mount Athos Performance, we believe in more than just looking good. We're on a mission to fuel a holistic lifestyle of health, a lifestyle that prepares you for every moment, from work to recreation. Built on purity, sustainability, and the pursuit of excellence, our products support functional fitness for everyday resilience and longevity. Welcome to Mount Athos Performance.